So our Torah and Haftorah, Parsha Naso, the second of the readings of Bamidbar, is census again. Again, Bamidbar, translated into English as Numbers, is the opening of the fourth book with a census of the men 20 years and older, which is the number of fighting age, those who could step forward to protect and defend and enable community to stand securely. But in Naso, it's the Levites who get counted, because the Levites have a special role. They are community servants. They, along with the Kohanim, the priests who are members of the tribe of Levite, serve the people as a bridge to God, as a bridge to the ideals of our highest values. And so because of the role and responsibility of the Levites, they are counted separately. And we know that those Levites not only have the privilege of being counted in Naso, but again, special responsibilities, which leads to the second part of Naso, which is laws about purity, including the Kohanim being vehicles for Shalom Bayit, resolving an accusation of infidelity by a husband accusing his wife of infidelity, and how the priest in that regard had a special role in administering a truth test, the Sota test, to see if she in fact was faithful or not. And then our Torah reading concludes with three blessings that are known to all of us. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and watch over you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, may God shine God's light upon you graciously. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, and may God turn toward you in favor, leading you toward wholeness, toward peace. Those 3 plus 5 plus 7 words are the priestly blessings that were recited both in the desert, as our Parsha presents them, but later on by the Kohanim every day in the courtyard of the Temple of Jerusalem, and in more recent times by parents for their children, in some cases a rabbi on behalf of the community for a bar bat mitzvah or a baby naming. And I will talk about those blessings a little bit more. Just a word about the Haftorah. It's a story of what will be Samson's birth, an angel coming to speak to the wife of Manoach, but speaking to her about how she who struggles with the yearning for children will one day be blessed, but this child will have certain responsibilities. He will be a Nazir, a Nazirite, not cutting his hair or drinking, and will be an important leader among the people of Israel. A riveting Haftorah of how an angel appears to a simple woman and makes a difference both in her life, but ultimately in the life of the people of Israel. And so now I return to those 3 blessings that we identify as parents with our gift to our children. Last night, my wife Linda and I had the privilege to have our daughter Anna at our Shabbat table, Anna who lives in Brooklyn, with her fiancé Lev. And I took such joy in placing my hands on my daughter last night as part of the rituals of the Shabbat table, and saying to her, may God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And then those 3, 5, and 7 words of blessing, yearning, a way of expressing our love for our children. The rabbis see those select words as very purposeful. There's so few. So much is said. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and guard you. The rabbis understand that first said as being about material possessions. May God bless you with all your physical needs and guard you. And then the rabbis will differ. 3 possibilities of what God's guarding against. One is the possibility that people will steal what you have. May God guard you, because once you have, you're vulnerable. The second is, may God guard you from your possessions possessing you. Because sometimes we can become too focused on our things and guarding them, and that quality of single-minded importance to possessions is something that the rabbis teach to be on guard against. But last, the rabbis will say, it is a blessing to have things, because to have possessions, to have money, to have resources is the opportunity to give charity, the opportunity to have time to study, the opportunity to relax and be our best. And so possessions in the Jewish tradition are a positive, but also it's the only one of those three blessings that has this notion of needing to be guarded as well, the dangers of what we own. The second, may God shine God's light upon you graciously, is understood in the commentaries, those 5 words, to deal with our minds, to be enlightened by Torah, to learn what is right and what is wrong, what is God's way, the expectations of us. And in doing so, to know that we are vulnerable, hence, vichuneka, may God be gracious to us. The word grace, like the word chana, is to receive kindness even when we are undeserving. It's an act of grace giving. And we, again, see God as love. We are given intellectual goals of goodness, of values, of right and wrong, of what is God's way, knowing that God, when we are indeed using our best efforts, deals with us with graciousness. And last, Ye'er na panav elecha v'chunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God, which is always the second word, it's a verb and then God for all three. May God turn toward us, and may it lead us toward shalom, peace. The last words of our Amidah are the words longing for peace. When we eat a meal, the last words of our grace after meals are oseh shalom, are for peace. And so likewise, the last word of these blessings that we as parents give to our children is may they feel peace, which is again so multifaceted. May they feel safe. May they feel in harmony with the world around them. And may they feel whole within themselves. For ultimately, no matter where we are there. No matter where we go, we are the same person. And it's our inner qualities that will determine if we are at repose, if we are in Shabbat, or are agitated. One of the images that most moved me this week was an image of a son posting on Facebook his mother. Again, that's what I want to focus in on now, is this relationship between parents and children, and what are our prayers for our children. The remarkable thing about those threefold blessings is the rabbi said when the temple was destroyed and we no longer had offerings of gifts to God in physical form, parents became priests. Our bounty of our table is our offering, and we bless our children across generations. And so this photo on Facebook was a picture of Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Dr. Ruth, now 92 years old, and her son posted and said, "This is my mother protesting on behalf of Black Lives Matter." Although she's 92, all less than 5 feet of her, she had a handwritten sign, and I could feel, I don't know her son, but I'm privileged to know Dr. Ruth. I was so moved and taken both by her activism, by her saying, yes, I know I'm old and there is a need for physical distancing and vulnerability, but I must allow my voice to be part of a larger chorus. That this matters. And again, it wasn't Dr. Ruth who posted the picture. It was her son saying, "Can you imagine my mom?" And I could feel his pride in her. She inspired me and continues to do so. You know, I was on an airplane this week coming back from Chicago, where I was with my wife, Linda, honoring her mother and participating in her mother's funeral. And on the plane, I watched the movie with Will Smith, Ali. And it's about Ali in the early 70s getting radicalized. Hearing the song, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome." Now, those were the days, those early, the mid-60s and the 70s, where there were also protests for civil rights. Brown versus Board of Education saying separate is not equal, the integration of schools, was now 66 years ago. But that song continued as I watched it in the movie. We shall overcome someday, someday. And Ali said to himself, he was then Cassius Clay, someday? One day? Why not now? And that's when he changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, because the movement at that time was, we can't wait. We've been waiting. My son Joey gave me a recommendation of a book to read. And I read this book. He gave me this book to read weeks ago, separated in time from the protests in our streets. And he said to me, "Dad, I read this book and it really shook me up. Because I became aware in reading this book that I can't and don't see the world through a black person's experience. I just don't. And in reading it, I was aware of how different my life is." The book is by Ta-Nehisi Coates, called Between the World and Me. I read it over Shavuot as my Torah readings. It's written by a writer, was a journalist, MacArthur Genius Prize winner, to his 15-year-old son. Again, I'm staying focused on this theme of letters of parents to children, of blessings of parents to children. Ta-Nehisi Coates writes to his 15-year-old son, "The greatest reward of this constant interrogation, of confrontation with the brutality of my country, is it has freed me from ghosts and guided me against the sheer terror of disembodiment. And I am afraid. I feel the fear most acutely whenever you, my son, leave me. But I was afraid long before you, and in this I was unoriginal. When I was your age, the only people I knew were black, and all of them were powerfully, adamantly, dangerously afraid. I had seen this fear all my young life, though I had not always recognized it as such." And then the last paragraphs of what is a very long letter, a short book. His son's name is Samori. "I do not believe that we can stop them, Samori, because they must ultimately stop themselves, and still urge you to struggle. Struggle for the memory of your ancestors. Struggle for wisdom, but do not struggle for the dreamers. Hope for them. Pray for them if you are so moved. But do not pin your struggle on their conversion. The dreamers will have to learn to struggle themselves, to understand that the field for their dream, the stage where they have painted themselves white, is the deathbed of us all. The dream is the same habit that sees our bodies stowed away in prisons and ghettos." What I took from reading these powerful, heartfelt words of a father to a son by Ta-Nehisi Coates is his physical vulnerability. Again, that's not this moment. This book was written 3 years ago. The sense that to be a black person in America, to be a person of color in America, is to feel and know that you are physically vulnerable, let alone lack privileges. I learned something interesting this week. Do you know that, at least according to one news item, half the high school students in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I have family, very affluent community, half the students got special dispensations because of ADD to have more time to take their SATs? Half. And I know that the students in Santa Ana of color, they don't get those dispensations. I know that they don't get the school counselors and the SAT preps that they can't afford. It is not a level playing field. And it's systemic. And it tears at my heart, not only with guilt, but with the awareness that it's not right, that it's not right, that God is the creator of all, seeks all. I was busy with my mother-in-law's funeral, and I did not see the original images of George Floyd. And I heard about it, but I don't like seeing that which is painful. And for the first day or two, frankly, I didn't even, again, I was busy with the funeral. I didn't know what had taken place. But I did take the time to watch and wince and to know that it wasn't just one policeman, but 3 on his back, taking the breath out of him. And it wasn't just one moment in time. I asked my son Joey what he thinks is different now. He said there's 3 things that are different that gives him hope as a young person. One is the camera. There has been brutality. There has been vulnerability as described by Coates. And now we watch it. We watch it in our living rooms. We look to turn away, but somehow we watch and wince. And the air is knocked out of all of us and not to be easily replenished. We have cameras. We also have a movement. When little Dr. Ruth was out there, she had her sign, Black Lives Matter. I have seen other riots in America throughout my life. I was in LA during the Watts riots of '68, the Rodney King riots. But what's different now is that there's a sense that this is a moment in time to create change, that there are ways that those, our Levites, our police, those who are commissioned to keep the peace, need to be aware of how better to police, and that it is not excusable to use chokeholds and to engage in brutality. Black people, brown people, yellow people, white people gathered at one protest that I saw at Jamboree and Pacific Coast Highway on Wednesday. It was a weird place in terms of Pacific Coast Highways has a lot of nice cars. It was mostly younger people with signs, BLM, Black Lives Matter. Mostly white people, but people of all colors. And people of all colors honking in support. And the police of our community standing back and being at a distance in what was a peaceful protest. And so there is a movement. And there's a sense that there are specific things that can be done. And yet, I'm old enough now to know that it's not enough to hope, that it's not enough to pray, that it's not enough to look to others. Eric Garcetti spoke yesterday, the mayor of Los Angeles, and I was moved by the calm in his voice and the sense of purpose. And he said, now is not a time to point fingers at others. Now is a time to look inward at ourselves, to be aware of our own internalized racism, our own willingness to judge others without knowing them, without appreciating our shared humanity. That indeed, if there is to be change, it must start with each of us in humility, reading a book like that of Ta-Nehisi Coates to his son. For to read it is to know that it's not in a political context. It's a self-description of the pain and vulnerability of being a person of color, being a black man, fearful for the safety of his son. Ribbon Shalom, Master of the universe, we are called in Psalm 23 to feel you as our shepherd, calmly, peacefully being guided, taken to still waters. And yet, the immediate next verse says that we are to continue with your guidance around roundabouts of justice in your name. As Rabbi Harold Kushner taught regarding Passover, God could have taken the people out, could have convinced the Egyptians it was in their economic interest to let them go, but wanted to convey that the reason that the Egyptians had to let them go is because God demanded it. God, the creator of all peoples, of all colors, of all faiths, that as a matter of right and wrong, the people of privilege had to let those who were least privileged in their midst have opportunity, of freedom, of choice, of moving toward that mountain where they could say, we will hear and we will do. May we who are part of a people who say, hearing the echo of our ancestors, we will do and we will learn. May we hear the calling to be exemplars. May we take seriously the inequities and correct them, for it is what God demands of us. Ribbon Shalom, Master of the universe, may we live up to the gifts you give us. May our material possessions not possess us. May you kindly know that we fall short of what we know is right and wrong, and may you nonetheless lead all of us by turning toward us with your light and love to a world of wholeness, a world of peace, and let us say, Amen.